he was going to speak about iPhone photography and, you know, any kind of smartphone photography. And that was supposed to be like a Saturday event. He obviously is not in a position to travel right now. So he did offer to do it online, but we talked it over with the board, and we really want to have him in person because there's something we'll get a little bit lost by doing it on the phone. So I wrote to him today and I let him know that we're gonna hold off until such time as he can come in person, and we'll reschedule with him. All right, that's it. Nick, it's all yours.
Give me 1 second. Just 1 second, Nick. I'm going to kill everybody's video, and then you can start.
Okay. All right, are we good?
Yeah, you can start talking. I'm just going to keep killing people's videos.
Okay, so, well, thank you everyone for coming. Thanks for having me. Certainly been a big change since the last time I've been down to your club in our world. Spend an awful lot of time in my life, as probably many of you do, on Zoom these days. So hopefully some of the images and things and some things that I will say will inspire you, and you know, you'll get something out of this program. So this is actually one of my older programs. It's probably about 8, maybe even close to 10 years old. Every time I put a program together, I put it together for a reason. And the reason I put this program together is because a couple things happened. And one of the things that happened is people were getting into this little bit of an argument and this little bit of an attitude about this thing called SOOC. If we were in person, I'd ask you if you know what that means. Some of you may know, some of you may not, but SOOC is straight out of camera. And somehow people would say, well, this picture that I took is straight out of the camera. Therefore, this is really photography. And, you know, if you use Photoshop or anything, you're not really doing photography. So, you know, as we've all been developing, you know, I've been doing photography since I was 9 years old, and I've done film and medium format and film developing and slides and you name it. You know, I have a wide range of photography that I do. I do weddings and portraits and models and landscape and macro. I you know, jack of all trades in photography. That's my ADD kicking in. And, you know, I started asking myself the question, well, you know, is what I'm really doing photography? And, you know, I think the answer is definitely a yes, but let's talk about it and let's kind of dissect what exactly we're doing. That's weird. My slides won't progress. So Thoreau says, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. And if there's certainly something interesting about photographers is photographers certainly see things differently. Photographers could be walking down the street and they see something and they see it as an image. And if they have their camera, they can make it into an image. And, you know, things that a lot of people would walk right by, photographers seem to see different. So, you know, it's not really what you're looking at that matters, it's what you see. And developing your eye as a photographer is, in my opinion, the most important thing. Sometimes it's the hardest. You know, again, you know, we see people that have the fanciest of cameras but take horrible pictures. And we see people using a very simple camera and they take great pictures. You're probably in a photography club because somebody said to you at some point, wow, you really have a good eye. And that good eye has led you to have an interest in photography. If you didn't have a good eye, you probably wouldn't be in photography. Maybe, but probably not. So let's ask some questions. So my first question is every photograph manipulated? Is any picture really what our eye sees? It's kind of a joke, but people say, well, that's what I saw. Maybe, but you didn't exactly see what was there. You may have saw in your brain what you want the final picture to look like, but it's not always what you see. I divide it into processing and manipulation, and we'll talk about, but what constitutes processing, what constitutes manipulation? What if you manipulate the scene? You know, is there something wrong with that? Because you usually do manipulate the scene, we'll talk about. Is it necessary to visualize the finished image prior to pressing the shutter? We talk about this thing called visualization, and Ansel Adams and Elaine Bryant and Guy Tal have all built on this term visualization. You know, I see something, and then in my mind, I'm going to make the perfect picture. So I need the right settings, the right light, and I'm going to make that perfect picture. Do you have to see it before you press the button? Might you see it later? Now with digital photography, I think we do see a lot of this stuff later. And you know, that's the final question. Is it okay to visualize the final image at the computer? It sure is, but I do want to talk about one thing. And I want you to, you know, I'm a teacher, I'm a college professor, so I got to give you a homework assignment. You got to go home and you got to look through your images, look through Lightroom, look through whatever you use to keep track of your images, and take a look at that initial image that you took in camera versus your final images. And how much did you really change that picture, right? Did you do huge crops? Do you do huge crops on most of your pictures, right? Are you making big changes in color balance and everything else in your pictures? Because if you are, I'm going to tell you, maybe you need to stop and go back and revisit your basic photography skills. Because you have to remember something, we're photographers. So it has to start out as a picture with a camera, right? It has to start out that way. Several years ago, I met I was at a family party with my wife, and someone introduced me to this cousin. And they said, oh yeah, Ken, he's a photographer too, like you. And Ken came over to me, he says, I'm not a photographer. He says, I have this little camera with there's a big crack in the screen. I can't even see what's in the LCD. He says, I point the camera at something that looks nice, but he says, I take it home, and what I do is I'm really good at Corel Draw. And I take, or Corel Paint, one of those programs, I forget what it is. He says, but I take the picture that I take what it is, and I really create a picture in Corel Draw. He says, I'm anything but a photographer. I have no idea what all the settings are. He says, I can't even see the picture in the LCD screen. He says, I pointed at something nice. He's a chauffeur. So he says, I drive around New York. I pointed at something nice, and then I go make it nice in Corel Draw. So it was kind of interesting how he said, I'm not a photographer. So the question is this question, how much manipulation is enough? Is it really even important for us to discuss? Ansel Adams says there's two people in every photograph. It's the photographer and the person viewing the photograph. And you know, how true is this? How many times have you kind of taken a picture, you really don't like it, but somebody else sees it and they're like, wow, I really like that picture. And this has happened to me a lot. I feel that if I had enough to actually take the picture, maybe somebody will like it. All right. And people get different things out of photographs. So what we're going to talk about tonight is, you know, kind of dividing photography. Photography is about seeing. Photography is about making certain selections. Photography is about processing, whether you're processing in a dark room or whether you're processing on your computer, images are being processed. And then it's about manipulating. And I'll talk about where I separate processing and manipulation. It doesn't really matter. It's just my opinion, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. So first of all, does our camera see what our eyes see? So I don't know if this is accurate, but I got this picture several years ago, and it was actually in a kind of a quasi-medical type journal, and they're saying if your eyes were lenses without your brain putting it together, this is kind of the way our eye would see, right? With the larger separation up at the top and then coming back down as you go distance. But our brain takes that picture and it kind of puts it together into the three-dimensional stuff that we see with perspective and everything else. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. So, you know, people say this thing, well, this is what I saw. But you know what? Every single photograph is somehow manipulated, okay? You know, the second you look in the viewfinder, you're manipulating. If I take my camera and I have a 50mm lens and I look to the right, or I look to in front of me, or I look to the left, right there, I'm deciding, right? I'm manipulating what you're going to see in that picture. Maybe you're going to change the lens. You might manipulate by changing the lens. Well, okay, I don't like the 50mm lens. I need to use a 200mm lens, or I need to use a 12mm wide angle lens. So I'm already manipulating the picture by changing the lens. You're manipulating what the viewer will see. Okay, well, I don't like that tree that's on the left, so I'm going to move a little bit more to the right so that tree's not in there. You're manipulating because the cameras can't adjust to the white balance like your eyes could. I just did a program and they were talking about art to hang in your house, and she was talking about, you know, take it in post-processing and change the white balance to match your furniture. If you're going to put it in the living room with this color furniture, change the white balance so it matches your furniture, right? Your eye sees about 20 stops. The digital camera, even the good ones, maybe now we're seeing maybe 15, 16 stops of light, you know, unless you start blending them together with HDR and things like that. You decide what to expose, you decide where to focus, you decide how much is in focus, you decide if you want to freeze it or you want it to be a longer shutter speed. But you know, the most important thing is you sort of want to manipulate that scene. The person looking at the picture, they can't hear, smell, or taste. But what you do while you process that image is making them look at that picture and get that feeling you had when you were at that scene. You know, what do I hear? What do I smell? What do I taste? I could see the picture, but I can't get the feeling. But when you do a really good image from the from the beginning to the end, people can really feel that. So one of the biggest mistakes a photographer can make is to look at the real world and cling to the vain hope that next time his film will somehow bear a close resemblance to it. And Galen Rowell, the world famous landscape photographer, said that. And you know, it's true. You know, you could do pretty good, but you can't exactly resemble what's there. So I want to show you some things here. So I'm going to show you this. This is a picture of Nickerson Beach. Just a short little video. Everybody was able to see that, right? And hear that? Just want to make sure. Just tell me if you can't. So I was at Nickerson Beach photographing birds. I put the camera down the beach and I took that little video because that's what I saw. That's what I saw. Photographers are supposed to do, you know, this is what I saw. But you know, is that really interesting? Because it's not really interesting to me. I didn't go there to show you a picture of the beach, the empty beach looking down. Okay, that's not why I went there. I went there to take some pictures of these oyster catchers. So here's what I saw. This is using a 70mm lens. Now, I want you to take a look. You know, take a look at the oyster catchers. They're running around. Birds are flying through. You see those birds flying through? You see that guy? That's what I saw. That's what I saw at 70mm. Got a little closer. That's what I saw. You see these little pipers, sandpipers over here running into the scene? So that's what I saw. But that's not what I went there to do. What I went there to do is get photographs of birds doing things that birds do. And I bet you didn't all see it, the things that birds do in that video. Here's one of the oyster catchers. Now this is using the 600mm lens, getting really up close and personal. Did you see did you see in that video the oyster catcher picking up that little oyster or whatever the heck he's eating there? You probably didn't see it in the video. But that's why I went there, because I wanted to get the picture with a long lens close up of these birds, and I wanted to get them eating something. That's what I wanted to show you. I also wanted to get the birds. Did you see those little sandpipers I pointed out, or plovers? This is a plover, I'm sorry. Did you see them picking up the worm? I bet you didn't. I bet you didn't see that in the video. But photography is about what I saw. That's what I saw. Not really, because what I wanted you to see is these birds doing something really cool. I told you, did you check out those skimmers flying by? I pointed them out. Did you catch them out? Did you see all the detail in their wing? Did you see their fantail? You probably didn't in the video, okay? But that's what my eyes were seeing. But I wanted you to see something different. So I took a camera and I selected a certain lens and I selected a certain shutter speed, because this is what I wanted to show you, okay? And that's what it's all about. Okay, are there any questions? We're okay? Okay. Everybody's still with us, right?
No questions currently.
Okay, great. Oops, I went one too far. So, you know, this seeing is also about feeling. And, you know, the best pictures contain feeling, emotion, mood, heart. The best pictures speak to you. You know, not a lot of pictures we take are really our best pictures. And I really, again, here's another part of your homework assignment. I really want you to go and look back at your images from the past few years. And how many of those pictures are really, really good? How many of those pictures will you be able to look at in 10 years and say, wow, that was a really good picture? I got to tell you, that number keeps going down for me. Now, and it's because I'm getting a lot more selective, and I think I'm getting better at photography. My friend and photography mentor, Ben Venezio, he said to me, if you look at last year's pictures and they're still good, it means you're not learning anything. He says, you need to constantly learn in photography. You're never going to stop learning in photography, and he's right. But think about your best images. They're not just a pretty picture or something. They contain feeling, emotion, mood, heart. They speak to you. There's something special about the pictures. Here's a picture of Mount Moran at Grand Teton National Park, right? Beautiful morning. I have this picture actually hanging on the wall in my office. Gorgeous morning, gorgeous reflection, nice calm lake. Everything looks beautiful. I remember it like it was yesterday. People walk into my office, they see this picture, it's printed really big, and they're like, oh my God, beautiful. It must have been peaceful morning and everything else. What they didn't see though, was the 300 photographers lined up along the coast there taking the same darn picture, right? Yes, it's a beautiful picture. Yes, it contains, you know, it has some mood and everything else. It doesn't have a ton of mood for me, a little bit, but, you know, I keep thinking about, you know, banging elbows with other photographers. So different things might mean different things to different people. Why does that not advance? That's weird. This is White Pocket, Arizona. Picture done completely purposely. We went there for specifically at this time. We get the Milky Way. And over here, this little, you could see my pointer, right? So,
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, thank you. This is Mars over here. And we knew that that was gonna line up. We used photo pills and we lined it all up and we went out there. This is a 40-mile, if anybody's been there, it's about a 40-mile four-wheel drive ride out to White Pocket, okay? This really means something because this was really visualized at the beginning when we say, hey, you know, we're gonna be able to see Mars, let's go out to White Pocket, we're gonna, the Milky Way's out, the night had to be clear, everything had to be perfect, and lo and behold, everything worked out perfectly. So this is kind of a funny picture. This picture doesn't mean a lot to me. It actually, I'm not sure why the picture wasn't deleted, but whatever. We were, in fact, I wonder, Vicky, you might have been on this shoot. This was out at that horse farm, out in Hunterdon County somewhere. We had the opportunity to go out and shoot this horse ranch, and they were on their horses and they were driving or they were riding, and we were photographing them riding. And this is really funny because while they were setting up, we were just walking around taking pictures. And I took this picture, and for whatever reason, the lady who owned the horse ranch saw this picture, and she's like, "Oh my God, I love that picture." And she bought the picture and she had it printed huge, and it's hanging on her wall. This means something to her. This means nothing to me. I kind of think it's a delete. It's not the greatest picture in the world, but this meant something to her. So sometimes these pictures just mean something to people. So you have to think about, what are other people thinking about your pictures? This is another thing, using photo pills and photographer's ephemeris and knowing where exactly things might line up. This is something we visualize, the supermoon. We're like, okay, if we're in this right spot, we could present this. Now again, I don't want to get off track here. We're talking about how much manipulation is enough, okay? Well, we're sort of manipulating where we're going to stand, what lens we're going to use, because we know that the parameters are what we want to shoot. And this was something that we visualized, and we were actually able to do the math and put everything together and actually get to that right spot to take this photograph. This is Death Valley National Park. Again, we knew we wanted to get out there for sunset. We in the mud flats here, we knew we wanted to get down low. I knew what lens to take, and we knew take a really wide angle lens. I'll show you something really cool we did with this, but this is kind of what we visualized. I wasn't exactly planning on doing a starburst there. We were hoping we'd get a really colorful sky back there, but we had to deal with what we had to deal with, and we ended up with a decent image anyway, or I ended up with a decent image. This is actually a cell phone picture. So, it doesn't always require the best of cameras. This is Ruby Beach in Olympic National Park. And just going out there to shoot stars at night. It was a little cloudy. We were waiting for the clouds to clear. I was just taking some cell phone shots, just playing around a little bit with the exposure. And where I was able to get this shot. And I think that's pretty cool for a cell phone shot. A little bit of manipulation and snap speed, but not too much. So photography is also about selection. Are there any questions? We're okay with questions? Okay. So photography is also about selection. You have a lot of things that we have to select when we're thinking about photography. We have to select where to shoot, what lens we're going to use, what settings are we going to use, the best frame of the shot on the computer. Now, some of these cameras shoot at 16 frames per second. Now you got to go and look and say, okay, which one am I going to process? Which one am I going to decide to do? You have to choose the best method of processing and manipulation if you choose to manipulate. You have to choose who and where you show your image. That's really important. Presentation. When I judge, I always talk about presentation. It's different if it's hanging in an art gallery with perfect lighting and a nice mat and everything else versus a camera club competition where, the projectors are usually off and the room lighting might not be right, etc. So who and where are you going to show your image? Are you going to print it, right? And then we'll just talk about this thing called anticipation. So there's a lot about selecting. So I want you to think about this for a second. At 1/3200th of a second, you're capturing an event that can occur 3,200 times in a 1 second period. You ever take a picture and somebody's eyes are closed? You're taking family stuff, and they're like, why did you take a picture when my eyes were closed? Well, you're taking at this fast speed. You can't possibly, anticipate that exact second when everybody's eyes are open, right? You can tell everybody to close their eyes and then open them, and then hopefully everybody's eyes are open. But, you kind of know what I'm saying here. So at 1/3200th of a second, that is a short period of time that you're capturing, like as if you're using a fast shutter speed like this. Even 1 second or 1/100th of a second, 1/100th of a second, that event can happen 100 times in that second. Okay, it seems like a slow shutter speed, but it's really not. So, you take these camera, you take these pictures, you bring them into Lightroom, and you got, 16 frames per second, and you shot a picture of a bird. It's like, well, which one do I want to take? So, you start selecting, and you're selecting, all right, well, the wing position's up here. I don't really like this one. This one looks pretty good. This one's a little static. The wings are a little crazy. I can't see the front wing here. So, I'm going to select this one. Okay. And again, somebody else might select this one. Somebody might select this one. Somebody might select this one. But then you go in and you're going to select, right? Remember, 1/3200th of a second. That's what this picture was taken at, right? 16 frames per second. If I held my finger on that thing, on that shutter, I probably had about 60, 70, 80 pictures of this bird flying by me, right? But, I chose this one. And this is the one that I processed a little bit. Okay, and I'll talk about how I process the picture like this. But that's the one that I liked. That's the one that meant something to me. All right, that's the one that I processed. Okay, you might have processed another one. Okay, but again, it's about selection. Here's shutter speed. This is a 1 hour shutter speed. This is star trails over Arches National Park. I forget what it's called, Park Avenue or something. Right, but this is done with a 14mm lens, maybe not quite I think it was a 14mm lens, but this is a 1 hour exposure. When you look into the night stars, do you see this? You certainly don't see star trails. But I manipulated what you're going to see by choosing a 1 hour shutter speed, as opposed to the last one at 1/3200th of a second, where I wanted you to see something frozen. Okay. So you're choosing things as you go. I said, I want you to see star trails. That looks pretty cool. This looks like a good spot. I'm going to choose what you see in the picture. And I set everything up, and there you have it. Okay. Questions? We're still good. So photography is also about, yes.
We have a question.
Okay.
What camera are you using?
What camera am I using? So my main camera now is the Canon EOS R. For birds, I'm using the 1DX2, but I've used mostly Canons, the 5D4, 5D3, 5D2. But I'm in love with the Canon EOS R. I think it's the best camera I've ever had. I wouldn't use it for birds, though. It's not quite there. Maybe the next one.
Another question is, how do you leave the shutter open for 1 hour?
So you use a remote shutter, and you put it on bulb, and you turn it on. You compose your scene. You click the shutter on bulb. You click it, and it'll stay on. You go to your car, you sleep, and come back an hour later and unclick it. So there's a little bit of thinking involved in how long that exposure will be, if your foreground is going to be exposed right. Sometimes you have to artificially light it. Sometimes it's lit by the moon. Sometimes you don't want it lit. Sometimes you want it silhouetted. But you could do these long exposures. You could stack exposures for star trails, or you could just leave it open, like the way that I did. But use bulb mode and a remote.
And how do you know that you need to leave it open for the hour?
So the hour is basically arbitrary. You could get star trail. You'll get star trails anything over 30 seconds. You sort of have to do the math. So you sort of take a picture initially, and you figure out what your exposure is for the rocks, and then you change your exposure so that you make sure that exposure is proper for an hour. You could do 2 hours, 3 hours. It all depends. That's for a whole nother course. You probably need to do a night photography. Roman Kuracek wrote a good ebook. You could get it on his website, Roman with Roman Photo Tours, on how to do night photography. And that's actually, he was writing that book when we did that other picture. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. So every time I click on the things, it changes the slide. So there's selection, and then there's perspective, right? And perspective is really important. So again, go back and look at your pictures. Do you have a specific perspective that you like? Do you like to be high? Do you like to be low? What is the perspective that most of your pictures are taken at? I mean, anybody who's ever shot with me, they know where I am. I'm usually low. You know, I love to get low. You know, I love to get reflections. Here's the Philadelphia City Hall. This night was freezing, and the only reason this area is not frozen is because they had ice melt on it on the sidewalk, and we took advantage of that because everything else was solid ice. And we went over there and able to get some pretty cool reflections of City Hall and the Christmas tree and everything else. But yeah, you talk about low perspective. The camera was on the ground, and I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. Sometimes you use things, sometimes you use people in perspective. You know, everybody knows the size of the Bible or a book, right? So it's kind of giving you perspective as to the whole church. So think about perspective and think about what you're trying to show. Think about how you're trying to manipulate the scene by perspective. Okay, and do your pictures have the right perspective? I don't have it in this program. I have it in another one. I have a picture of my wife standing by a waterfall, but you know, I was using a wide angle lens. She accidentally got in the picture, and it makes the waterfall look gigantic. And the waterfall is actually pretty small, but the perspective is based on the lens that you chose, right? So sometimes when you're putting a picture together and you're trying to put this scene together, you want to use certain things that are going to give you perspective, okay? So this is a waterfall in Hayden Park up in Morris County, New Jersey. Well, it's not really a waterfall. I posted this picture on Facebook, and somebody from New York says, "Where's that waterfall? I got to come take pictures of it." This is not a big waterfall. This waterfall is about 6 inches high, and I'm in the water. The camera is right down here, right, a couple inches above the water. It's a 12mm lens looking up at the water. And it's giving you a perspective that this is this massive thing, okay? I'm manipulating the scene here for you to see something that's not really there. You would have walked by this. I'm not saying I would have walked by. We all would have walked by this 1,000 times and not thought about anything, okay? And like I said, somebody saw this picture and says, "Oh my gosh, I want to go to that waterfall and photograph it." No, you don't. Go to a little pond in a lake. Go to a little pond in a park by your house. You'll be able to create the same thing. But I'm manipulating the scene by using a specific lens and a specific shutter speed. Scene in New York City. You see this puddle here? This is a small puddle. This is not a big puddle. I'm changing the perspective here so you think it's a bigger puddle. Check the next picture out. That's me taking that picture. There's the puddle. There's the puddle. Okay, I'll go back. The lens is making this look like a big thing with this big, you know, with a lot of water there. Sometimes I love to do this with lakes and little, I like to do it with little puddles and big landmarks like in arches or other places to make it, and it's not a big lake, it's just a little tiny thing. You can make a reflection in anything. Again, I'm kind of manipulating the scene for you to see what I want you to see. Here's another one. This is Columbia River Gorge. See this big thing of water here? Getting a nice reflection, everything else. Well, unfortunately, I had to get wet to take this picture, but there's where the camera was. There's where the camera was to take that picture. This water here, go back, this water here is this water here. I probably cleaned it out a little bit, right? Notice my pants are all wet because I had to walk through the water up to here to get there. But nobody else got that picture because nobody else wanted to get wet. But I'm manipulating what you're seeing here, right? That's not what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, this is a nice pond or whatever and a nice reflection. No, not really. This is really where that reflection's coming from. This water is all moving so fast, it's very hard to find calm spots. Luckily, it had rained. This is Columbia River Gorge, so it rains there a lot. Okay. I thought I saw a question. Was there a question? No?
No questions that I see.
Okay. The essential things in life are seen with the eyes, are not seen with the eyes, they're seen with the heart. And again, the best pictures are the ones that come from your heart. Think about that emotion. Think about what you're thinking about when you took that picture. Are your pictures really showing that emotion? Okay, are they really showing that? Again, when you go through your pictures, do you get an emotion? Do you get a feeling? When I do landscapes, I can look at my landscapes for the last 10 years and I could tell you exactly what I was feeling during most of them, right? I know what it is. So it's also about processing. And bottom line, I don't care what you think, digital images have to be processed. Film images have to be processed, okay? Everything has to be processed. You know, whether you use Photoshop or Lightroom or Luminar or On One or whatever the heck you're using, you're still processing. You have to process your pictures. Even if you don't process your pictures, your camera processes your pictures for you. We'll talk about that. So here's a picture. This young lady, I forget her name. You know, this was a picture of the raw file, right? Just did a little skin toning, cropped in a little tighter. That was it. That's how much the image was processed. Not too much else was changed from camera, right? Here's another one. Wood duck flapping. Here's the raw file, basically, that we're looking at in Lightroom or Camera Raw, wherever that is. This was the original that I took. Did a little manipulation, darkened some things, cropped in a little bit, and there's the final picture. Am I really changing the scene? Not really. Changing it a little bit, but you know, maybe a different exposure would have darkened those highlights down, right? But either way, that's okay. It's being processed. If you shoot in JPEG, some people say, well, I don't shoot RAW because I don't want to process my pictures, so I shoot in JPEG. If you shoot in JPEG, you're processing your pictures because you select different things in the back of your camera, right? You select portrait mode or landscape or neutral or faithful or monochrome. You select these things and the camera has an algorithm in there. It has software in there that it's going to process your picture, right? If you put it in portrait mode, it's doing certain things so that you probably get the best picture for a portrait versus landscape, okay? So there's going to be different settings in there. You select your white balance, right? You call it, that's to change the color temperature, right? Go out somewhere and shoot the same scene. Change your white balance and see what happens to your picture, whether it gets warmer or cooler, right? You select those things. So you're deciding what the picture is going to look at. If you're using film, you're selecting what type of film you use, right? Landscape photographers would use certain film because they wanted that feeling of certain film, right? That was important for them. And it's the same thing here. So most of you probably know this, but I still want to review it because, you know, there are people that shoot in JPEG, which is fine. I do suggest if you shoot in JPEG to do some experiments in camera in RAW files. I want to mention that RAW file is not an image format. A RAW file is a collection of data. And what happens is either you, whether you're using your RAW processor like Lightroom or Camera Raw or whatever, You take that raw data and you make it into a picture. If you're shooting JPEG, the camera takes that raw data, makes it into a picture, saves your JPEG, and throws the rest of the data out. Okay? The raw file contains a ton of data. So I was doing this program maybe about a year ago at the Staten Island Camera Club, and I was asking people, when I got to this, what program they used as their raw processor. And this one lady, this little old lady, she raises her hand. She says, I use CVS. And I'm like, what is CVS? I've never heard of that. Well, she shoots film and she uses CVS, the drugstore, to process her picture. So I kind of thought that was kind of funny. But you know, it doesn't matter if you use Lightroom or Camera Raw, whatever you're using, learn how to use it and use it to its best ability. And remember, your camera comes with software, with raw converting software as well. Raw files contain data only. The data must be manipulated. If it's not optimized, it'll produce gibberish. I'll show you a little joke that I have in the next slide. Remember, the raw converter is manipulating your images based on parameters you set. If you're shooting in JPEG, you're based on parameters that the Japanese camera manufacturers set. Okay? I'd rather do it myself. Again, would you rather have your film processed at CVS or a professional color lab? And you know, JPEGs are manipulated by the algorithm set by your camera manufacturer. So I took a raw file one day and I tried to open it in a web browser or something, and I did, and I got about 90 pages of this. So there's one of my pictures in raw. I have no idea. I don't know anything about computer language or anything, but I just kind of thought that was funny because I was trying to open this raw file. This was before I knew what the heck I was doing, and all of a sudden I got like all these pages of this gobbledygook stuff. So there's my picture. But it certainly doesn't look like a picture, but I guess that data can be taken, or the data can be taken, and it could be processed through a raw converter, and it could be made into a picture. So is every photograph manipulated? This was during like Hurricane Sandy when people were putting these pictures on the internet like, oh my gosh, you know, there's sharks driving down the highway. Probably not. It was probably manipulated. Just my guess. Now, what if we manipulate the scene? Can we manipulate the scene? This is Adams Falls at Ricketts Glen Park in Pennsylvania. There were two things that really bugged me about this scene. Number one, this big tree going across the falls over here. Number two, it's hard to see in this perspective, but there's a stick right here. And that stick bugged the heck out of me. And I wanted that stick out of here. So I have two options. I could take the picture and remove it in Photoshop, or I could get my high-priced assistant to go down there and move the log for me and risk his life. Well, he was able to do that one, but he said, hell no, I'm not going up to do this one. But you know what? We could do it in post-processing, and there's the post-processed picture. Moved by a person, moved by the clone tool. No lies lost doing that. All right, perfectly easy. Is it okay to do that? I think it is. We don't want to manipulate the truth. You know, if we're a photojournalist, we probably don't want to manipulate the truth. If you're, you know, we're seeing on social media, we see a lot of manipulated truth, that's for sure. This was actually put out, this is from a movie, but this was actually on the internet during, again, Hurricane Sandy or Irene or something. This is what they were saying was happening in New York. It's not even a valid picture of New York. It's an old picture, but people were actually freaking out, believing this was true, the truth. Here's another one. People were putting this on the internet. Oh my gosh, the Statue of Liberty. This is from a movie. This is fake, 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 fake. So my question is, was digital the start of manipulation? Ansel Adams says the negative is like the composer's score and the print is the performance. Ansel Adams spent hours and hours in the darkroom. Ansel Adams would love Photoshop. In fact, he did see a little bit of Photoshop at the end of his life. And he loved Photoshop, and he would have loved it more. He'd probably be the best Photoshop person in his day, right? So we were certainly manipulating pictures early. So check this stuff out. The Beatles' Abbey Road album. So this is the album cover, and I want you to notice, it's hard to see here, but Paul McCartney here is holding a cigarette in his hand. They made a poster of this and brought it to the United States, but they felt that they didn't want a cigarette in his hand. And here's a close-up of that poster. He doesn't have a cigarette. It's the same exact picture. They manipulated, this is before Photoshop, they manipulated the cigarette out of his hand, okay? Manipulation's been around for a while. It's not something new to Photoshop. Picture of O.J. Simpson in Times and Newsweek. This is the exact same negative. This is the exact same negative. Both Newsweek and Time bought the exact same negative. Look what they did. They processed it differently to portray a different person. They portrayed the person that they wanted you to see. Okay, they were manipulating. This is the same exact negative. Looks like two totally different people. Tragedy versus murder, right? This on the front of TV Guide. This is Oprah Winfrey, apparently the richest woman on TV who lost all this weight. Well, she didn't really lose weight. They took Anne Margaret's body, darkened it a little bit, put Oprah's head on it, and there you have it. It's the same exact dress. It's the same exact body, okay? That was all done in film. There's no Photoshop there. That was all done in film, okay? And you could dodge and burn and do things in the dark room to make your pictures look darker, lighter, or however you want it. And these guys apparently were pretty good at it because that tricked a lot of people. This is exactly the same body, totally different heads. Remember these two? And the one tried to break the one's leg or something. I forget the exact thing. They had this thing on Newsday, Fire on Ice. They had the two practicing together on the same ice. There is no way that these two were this close to each other, and especially doing these tricks like this. These are two separate pictures blended together in the darkroom to make it look like one to sell newspapers or magazines, whatever Newsday. I think Newsday's a paper, right? So they were doing they've been doing manipulation for a really long time. It's not something new. Okay, questions. Anybody have any comments or anything? Okay, so let's talk about processing versus manipulation. When does processing start, and when does processing stop and manipulation start? There's no solid definition of this. What I'm giving you is my opinion. You have to make your opinion as to it. I have this new thing, I'm in Camera Naturalist Camera Club, and even though it's Naturalist Camera Club, you're not really supposed to manipulate. A lot of people manipulate. And what I've done in the last 3 years is I really don't manipulate the pictures. I'll only go to my steps of processing the raw file, and that's it. And that's my own choice. That's my own choice. So let's talk about that. So my processing workflow is the raw file, the raw processor, Adobe Camera Raw, Lightroom, Canon, Digital Photo Professional, whatever. I keyword my pictures, organize them, adjust exposures, adjust basic settings, might do some curves, hue saturation. I might crop it a little bit. I might resize it. Then I'll usually sharpen it. Okay, and I usually do that stuff in Lightroom processing or Photoshop. That's my processing workflow. Most of the pictures, especially nature pictures, that's basically what I'm doing to them. Not a whole lot more. If I was shooting JPEG, the camera would be doing all this stuff with the exception of organizing them and putting keywords in them. All right, but that's my basic processing workflow, right? Think about what yours is. Right? To get that picture from what you photographed initially to present it someplace. So here's a picture, that's all that was done to this picture, right? It was being in the right light at the right time, okay? Nothing else was manipulated. It might have been cropped a little bit, some curves, sharpened and pretty much sized, and pretty much that's it. This is the shack at Island Beach. We got the moon over here, getting the Milky Way coming out of it. There's not a lot done here. Again, just basic curves adjustment, probably no cropping at all. Just some basic processing in Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, and that's it. Not a whole lot more done. Maybe some noise reduction, probably some noise reduction. Some bear cubs playing in Alaska. I will tell you that I put this in a competition and I did change something. This strip up here, I took that strip out with the clone tool, right? When I put it in a competition, right? Because the judge would say that that's probably distracting. Oops. Butterfly on a Mexican sunflower, using the 600mm lens and flash. Again, I chose the lens. I chose to use flash. I chose where I stood. I focused on the flower. I had a good clean background back there. And when the butterfly flew in, I just started firing away. And there's the picture that I got. In fact, the sun was actually over here. The sun was kind of behind. And I couldn't get the sun behind me because the background over here, people would be walking. So I just used flash and went the other way. Again, I chose what to use. I chose how to do this so that the presentation that I wanted you to see, you're seeing. Another one, just basic processing. This is Iceland. Again, not much done to this picture. Just this is pretty much what it was, some basic processing done to it. So now let's talk about what I define as my manipulated workflow. Were there any questions? We're good? Okay, whoops. Let's talk about my manipulated. So all pictures need that minimal processing that I just talked about. But when I start doing other things like cloning or using in-camera effects or filters, right? When I use global or selective tonal adjustments, when I use a liquify tool, when I convert to black and white, you know, people say, well, it's what I saw. Well, we don't see in black and white, yet sometimes people say, well, black and white pictures aren't manipulated. Well, they certainly are. You don't really see in black and white, do you? It's just more accepted because historically that you know, black and white has a history there. If you image blend, you know, doing an HDR or manually blending or using luminosity masks to blend, whatever. If you add skies or if you add textures, using plugins, that's spelled wrong, it should be Luminar. Using some plugins and Luminar, On1, Nik, Topaz, etc., or compositing pictures, okay? And again, there's nothing wrong with this, but I just put this in my manipulated workflow. I do want to say a quick thing here. You know, learn how to use these plugins. Don't just take them for what they're worth and press the button and let the picture process itself. Learn to use them. Learn to use them to your advantage so that what you saw, you can process and you can make it the best picture that you took. So here's a picture. This is using 2 speed lights, process in Adobe Camera Raw, some Photoshop CC, and then manipulated or change the black and white in Mac Fun tonality. Okay, you know, again, this isn't exactly what we saw in the camera. There was some things done with some dodging and burning and other things. Okay. But, you know, it was the original picture. It was the intent. That's what we intended to do, high contrast black and white pictures of her. Here's something that was manipulated in camera. I do what I call the hat trick, where I leave the exposure when I do fireworks. I leave the shutter open for a long time. I put the hat over the lens when the fireworks aren't there. I take the hat off, put it back, but I leave the shutter on for a long time. Right, I leave the shutter open, and now you get all these different bursts in there of fireworks. Okay, I'm manipulating, but I'm manipulating from the camera. And again, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. I don't care. That's the picture that I want. Here's something. This is using a fake background. You know, that background back there is fake. And then I blended it with another picture. It's actually a double exposure. I took the picture with the fake background, and then the window had all kinds of water on it, and double exposed it, and there you have it. So this picture was really manipulated.
We have a question about the last one.
Yes.
When you're doing the double exposure, which exposure did you take first, the background or the flower?
I took the flower, and then I took the window. So the flower was with the background, and then I took the window. The window it was raining outside. This was at Longwood Gardens. So yeah, then I just took the window. Yep. So this one was really manipulated. This is up at the NECCC Amherst conference, and they have these setups with these models. The problem with this picture, or with this setup, this model, they had her about 6 feet, 8 feet away from this mirror. And it was horrible because there was this big empty space. I cut her out. I cut out the center. I moved her closer, and there's the picture. Okay, this picture is highly manipulated. Okay, it's almost a composite. It's the same picture, but it's almost a composite. Like almost the whole center is cut out, and she's moved in there like that to make it look like it matches. But they actually did change the setup later, but initially their setup was bad. So this picture is sort of a joke. This is my daughter's friend, and my daughter was taking a portrait class. My daughter's minor in college was studio art. She's now an OB/GYN resident, but she was a studio art minor. And my daughter sometimes used to make fun of me when I took model pictures because she said that I did too much face smoothing, and I kind of like to smooth faces a lot. So she asked me to do this picture of her friend, not take the picture, she took the picture, but she asked me to manipulate it. So I kind of made a joke, and this is the picture that I manipulated. You know, I totally took everything out of her face, and I sent it back to her as a joke. And of course, the girl saw the picture. She's like, "Oh my God, I love that picture." And I'm like, no, that was a joke. That was a joke. That's not real. You know, and I sent her the other one, but she still liked this picture better. Several months later, when I finally met this girl, it was her roommate in college. She answered the door, and I'm like, I didn't even know who she was. Like, she totally doesn't look like this, but you know, sometimes you kind of manipulate too much. Okay, you have to be careful of that. You have to think about that. Sometimes the client wants it manipulated more. When I do a wedding, I ask the bride and groom, do you want a lot of skin smoothing or do you not want a lot of skin smoothing? I'll show you some examples, but you need to tell me what you want. Here's another highly manipulated picture. If this was in person, I'd ask somebody to kind of guess what's happening here. What's happening here is this is the same horse. This is one side of them. This is the other side of them. They look totally different from one side to the next. Okay, and you know, this is a pretty simple blend. The best photographs are the ones that provide a context, a description, but leave enough room for individual interpretation by the viewer. Abstraction. Okay, you want that room for the viewer to look and the viewer to think about it. Okay, when a judge in camera clubs is judging your picture, they're not looking at the artistic value. They're just looking at the technical aspects of the picture. You could take that same picture that you get a 6 on and hang it in an art museum, and somebody might stop and look at it and spend time, right? And it's that abstraction that they're taking out of the picture that you took. It allows the viewer to fill in the blanks and resonates because it becomes a personal viewing experience. That's what you want your images to do. And whether you do that with manipulation, post-processing manipulation, or pre-processing, whatever it is, you're manipulating that scene to get that context that somebody could view and somebody could enjoy. So let's look at just some things going on. This is pretty much straight out of the camera. This is the Roosevelt Island Bridge, Roosevelt Island trolley coming up over here. Just standing there, put the camera on on a platypod on the platform and just did a long exposure. I'm not sure what the exposure is, maybe 20 seconds or so. Pretty much nothing else is done to this. If you look at the raw file, pretty much you're going to see that. Might be a little flatter. Okay, the scene is manipulated. This isn't what you see. You don't see light trails with your eyes. You see cars moving back and forth. You don't see light trails. I manipulated it so you could see this. Didn't need Photoshop to manipulate it. I could do it in camera. So this picture is way far out. So, by the way, I hope it looks better on your screen. It looks terrible on my screen. This is the Mesquite sand dunes in Glacier. I mean, it's not Glacier. Death Valley National Park. Just adding some black and white, adding some heavy tones to it. Just trying to get that feeling of flow. Okay. Now, there was manipulation done to this afterward for sure. Okay, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I did, but you know, just converting it to black and white, you know, pushing the tones on both ends, okay, making it appear the way that I wanted it to appear. So starfish in the surf. I found this starfish up at in Cape Cod, and I saw him in the surf. I kept trying to take a picture, but every time the water hit it, it moved. And then I went and picked it up and realized it was dead. So I took it and we brought it home. So then I said, I'm going to go down to Sandy Hook and I'm going to try to reproduce that photograph. And of course, every time I put it down in the surf, it would move. So I stuck a little stick in the bottom of it, stuck them in the sand, did a long exposure, and there you have it. Okay, it wasn't just this natural thing. I completely manipulated the scene on this one. Another double exposure, in camera double exposure. This is actually a triple exposure. A lot of the newer cameras have double, triple, multiple exposure features. Play around with it. You get some cool stuff. But again, don't just play, you know, think about colors, think about tones, think about the artistic value. It's hard. It's hard to do multi-exposure in camera. It's certainly easier to put your multiple exposures in post-processing, which is fine. Try to play with it in camera, see what you get. So this is something that probably most of you have not heard of. This has done something called lens stacking, and not focus stacking, it's lens stacking. And basically what it is I have the camera set up on a tripod, and the first picture is taken with a 16mm lens. I don't move anything, but I take that 16mm lens off, and I put the 24mm lens on. And then at the 24mm lens, I focus exactly on this thing, which looks like a log, but it's actually just a little stick. It's a stick maybe 8 inches long by maybe 1.5 inches thick. Okay, I'm using the 24. And then to get the distance mountains, I'm using the 105mm lens. Okay, it's called lens stacking. So I'm using 3 different lenses there. This picture for real, if I just use the 16mm, this stick would be really tiny and these mountains would be really diminutive. They're really small in the distance, okay? But I lens stack them. Again, using cameras on a tripod, f16 for each one of them, 16mm, 24mm, 105mm, and I blended the 3 in post-processing. Highly manipulated picture here.
Hey Nick, do we have a break in here somewhere, or
Sure, go ahead. Question.
Give just to give everybody a 5-minute break.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to stop here or go a couple more slides.
No, we can stop here. We're almost done. I don't know how many more slides, but yeah, well, we can stop. Yeah, take a little break. Are there any questions?
I'll unmute everybody and they can ask you questions.
Yeah.
And we'll just do a quick 5-minute. I'll put a timer on my phone here.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions, you are all unmuted.
I'm listening if you have any questions or comments.
I have a question. If I shoot scenic, for instance, and what I'm doing is not for journalism, I'm not looking for reality or real, I'm not faking anything, but I say, oh, I need somebody in there, and I buy a stock shot of a beautiful girl to put in there. How do you feel about that?
Listen, I feel you do whatever you need to do. If you want to take the whole picture by myself, but, you know, you do what you have to do. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, as long as you're not, you know, telling people that you shot the girl and everything else. You composited it, and that's your choice.
Yeah.
And
No,
I think a lot of people do that. There's nothing wrong with that.
my feeling has always been, it's the final photo that counts. It's not how you got it, what you did to produce it. Either people will like it or they won't like it.
Absolutely, and you know, I don't know how long we have, but if we have time, I'll show you a quick video at the end. I'm not sure how much time you have for this, but and basically what the video is, it's pictures are some are manipulated, some are straight out of camera, some are processed in post-processing. And I ask you, does it really matter? Some pictures you like, some pictures you don't. Does it really matter how the picture got to be that?
Right.
And the answer is probably going to be no. You enjoy looking at the picture, but I still want everybody to remember. Starts out as photography. We are photographers, and we really want to think about: are we doing photography? When does it not become photography anymore? So, what else? Anybody else got any comments, questions?
Yes, Nick,
Hi,
I
Lynn.
have one. Hi. The lens stacking,
Yes.
what did you put that together with? What did you put those 3 shots together with?
I manually did it in Photoshop.
Oh, using Photoshop. So what could I use? I don't.
So basically what I did was loaded into Photoshop layers and then erased one layer over the next. And it took a little bit of using a transform tool in some spots to make it blend perfectly, but this isn't totally easy to do.
It doesn't seem easy.
No, and you know, I'm not sure that it's a necessary thing to do.
How do you shoot focus stacking without moving the camera? I mean, when you change lenses, really.
I know. You gotta. What I do is I had the other lens in my hand, and I took my left hand and I put it on top of the tripod, and I used the remote. I took the picture. My hand was there, so I kept my left hand on that tripod. I put the other lens on. I kept my hand there. Took the other 2 pictures. You know, I took the 24 millimeter, moved out, took the 105 millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it seemed to work. I don't think they were perfectly lined up. Like I said, I had to use the transform tool a little bit in some spots, but it lined up pretty good. Not too bad.
It looks like a Salvatore Dali.
Yeah, it really does. Looks great. I have one other thing, Nick.
Yes.
Your waterfalls in Iceland,
Yes.
I have that same exact shot. That was in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yes. Who did you
Yeah.
go there with?
I went there with one of my club members.
Okay.
We had a photographer's map. You must have followed the same map.
We didn't follow the map. We actually we were just driving around and we found that waterfall. I don't know how we found it.
I don't know how you found it
That was
either.
back in
with that map.
2010. I still think that maybe we were the original ones that found it back in 2010, because we had to go through cattle fences and stuff to get to this thing.
Oh, no, but there was nothing around for hours.
Yeah. My friend Roman was standing on the edge, and I said to him, I said, step back and give me your car keys, because if you fall down, I am stuck out here forever. I'm totally serious. No, we had no idea where we were. And that's far. That's in the middle of nowhere.
I know. It was in the middle of nowhere.
But I remember taking his car keys and I put them on the car seat. I said, well, nobody's going to be stealing the car. And I said, but if one of us go over and we have the keys, we're dead out here.
Yeah, that was really a weird place, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Nick, it's Vicky.
Yes. Hi, Vicky.
A picture of you taking the picture is how I remember you on every shop we ever went on.
That's why I say perspective. You know, I like the low perspective.
I mean, laying in front of everybody out there at the horse farm, as the horse
Yes.
was coming down the hill.
Yeah, and I got that one picture of her, and the horse is looking at me down on the ground.
Yeah.
That's a cool picture.
All right, Nick, give me 1 second. I'm going to mute everybody, and I'll unmute you again.
What? Okay.
Okay, Nick.
Okay. So I think Vicki might have been on this one too. This is the National Cathedral in Washington. You know, I didn't have to manipulate anything here. This is the architect made this like this. So at around an hour or so after sunrise, the light comes through the windows and create these gorgeous colors. Okay, and this is just a gorgeous scene to see. This is the National Cathedral in Washington. Here's one that has very little manipulation. This is using flash with a 180 millimeter macro lens. The twin light flashes at the end. This is at Longwood Gardens. They dye the water in the black. They dye the water black, right? So your background appears black. But getting that lens right in there with those twin light flashes makes this thing just light up. Okay, and again, you know, basic processing of this one, not a whole lot of post-processing manipulation. This is just you know, using like an HDR program, put 3 images together and let the program process it for you. Okay, rusty old cars and things make great for those HDR programs to manipulate your pictures. I don't exactly remember why this picture is in here. I was going to take it out, but it's one of my favorite places. This is Connery Pond in the Adirondacks. I don't think anything was really manipulated here. It's just an early morning shot of the fog. This is an orchid. This is a 26 image focus stack. So there's 26 images here stacked together to make this shot from end to end. Okay, so I guess we would consider this one highly manipulated. You could certainly shoot at f/22, but just playing around with focus stacking. And that's basically, you start your focus point down here, focus, 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 and go all the way through. Some of the cameras, the Olympus, and I think the Fuji cameras have automatic focus stacking where it just does it automatically for you. You put the camera on a tripod and it just takes all the different pictures for you at different focal lengths. The moon over between the Empire State Building and this other building, you know, the moon was rising from over here, just firing away as the moon's coming up and hoping that I'm firing away at the right time when it gets in between there, right? Because the moon, there's not a whole lot of room there. And if I was to wait for that to happen, I probably would have missed it. So as soon as the thing got up here, I just started firing away. And luckily, lo and behold, I got one with it right in between. So this is pretty manipulated. So it's the spring. We see a lot of bleeding hearts out there. Great for doing macro close-up photography. But you know, what do you think happens every time you go to take a picture of one of these things? The wind blows, right? But what you can do is, you could do what I did, and you could take it inside. Use a fake background, blur out the background, take a picture of these flowers, blur it, print it on the 13 by 19 matte piece of paper, hang it, put it in the background, put your flower up, do your lighting the way you want it, and take your picture. You're inside, it's never gonna blow. Beautiful flowers preserved forever in a photograph. Little baby, I'm certainly not a baby photographer, and I certainly don't have the patience. This baby was crying and screaming, and we didn't know how to get pictures of him, and the mother had this special hat for him. And well, down here, underneath this green blanket is daddy. Baby's laying on daddy's chest. Okay, that's how we got the baby to quiet down. Put this thing over the end of the couch. Daddy's laying on top of the couch. Put this over the end of the couch. There's your picture, done. Okay. Again, manipulated. Does it matter? That's the picture mom liked. I put this one special for Linda. I was hoping Linda was going to be here. Linda, you are here. I hope you're still here. This is Princeton. I just took this weekend, and Linda said, "Oh, I like." Or several people said, "I like that red door." The door's not red. The door is black. But I've been taking since we've been in this quarantine. I've been taking all these photography courses online, and the one course I just took was on color theory, and I'm like, well, it's perfect. That's what we need in this picture is a red door, not a black door at the end of the time. I either need somebody standing there in the red dress, or somebody walking through there in a red dress, or red door. So it was much easier to just do the red door. Just a street photograph with some selective focus. I stood there for a while. I selected focus on him. I selected focus on her. I selected focus on this instrument that she's playing. I selected focus on his hand. I just tried playing around a lot with it. Okay, kind of when you do street photography, very different from camera club photography. There's lots of distractions in the background, but the focus kind of brings you to where I want you to see. And again, I played with different focus points, but at this point, I wanted you to look at her face, okay? And that's the sharpest part of the image. And because of the way that the f-stop that I chose and where I selected to focus, I'm bringing the scene to your face. I'm bringing your eye to her face, okay? And some of the other pictures I did, she's blurred out. I bring your eye to his face, okay? Again, I'm choosing that. Doesn't matter what I do in Photoshop. I chose that in camera. I chose where to focus. It didn't matter if this was on film. It didn't matter if this was a JPEG, a RAW, large format, small format, or whatever, iPhone. It didn't matter. What I did was I chose where I want you to look. And in this case, I made her face the sharpest and I made it the brightest. That's where your eye probably went first place. I manipulated. That's where I wanted your eye to go. Manipulating the truth here. This isn't real bokeh. This is a shell sitting on a tray of sand. Those aluminum oven trays, and the edges kind of curl up, and that's what you're seeing back here in the background. Done by lighting. An eagle catching a fish. There's no manipulation done there. It's just, again, right anticipation. Camera that shoots 16 frames per second, make sure I'm focused right, make sure I'm exposed right, right time, right location, and I was able to get this. And pretty much with the exception of a little bit of cropping, that's out of camera. So Elaine Bryant, very, very good landscape photographer, says, I share the opinion of Ansel Adams, who said, and I paraphrase, there is nothing more boring than the technically perfect rendering of a fuzzy visual concept. In other words, an artistic photograph is created when technique is used to express the vision and an emotion, not when technique is used for its own sake. Our camera club had somebody do a program a couple weeks ago, and basically what she was doing was taking these pictures, kind of the bad pictures, kind of delete pictures. And she was putting blurs and everything else in them. And suddenly she was calling them art. I really disagree with her. You take a bad picture and you start to throw filters on and suddenly you call it art. I'm not saying it can't look nice. Some of her stuff was nice, but I really think that art and photography, it has to be done intently, right? You have to intentionally be doing things. Okay, you can't just take listen, you might sometimes take a bad picture and say, wow, it turned out pretty cool. That's fine, okay? But was that really your intention? And photography is an art, okay? It has to start out as a photograph and it has to be done intentionally. And that's where I think we're losing this, well, you did this or that in Photoshop. As long as that was your intent to do that, I think that's fine. So I'm just going to read this. I know this is a lot for a slide, but what is photography? Photography is the art, science, and practice of creating durable images by creating light or other electromagnetic radiation, either chemically or by means of a light-sensitive material, or electronically by an image sensor. What is imaging or image creation? No matter how much post-processing and manipulation is applied to an image, if it starts out having been created by recorded light or electromagnetic radiation, it's a photograph, it's photography. Personally, I prefer to create images using camera techniques rather than post-processing, but I also prefer nature photography to wedding photography. I can do both, just prefer one over the other. I'll bet that in a box of mixed chocolates, there are some chocolate flavors you will prefer over others. That doesn't make those less preferred bad. As a matter of fact, your least favorite flavor will be someone else's favorite flavor. So do we have a few minutes to show you slide program, or are we over?
We have some time, but we also have a couple questions.
Okay, let me show you the slide program, and then I could do the questions if that's okay. Or we could do the questions while I'm getting this ready.
Where'd the question go? Do you ever use selective focus like a lens baby?
Yes. In fact, you're going to see a couple of pictures in this slide program. I've been doing most of it in post-processing. I do have a lens baby. I don't use it as much as I used to use it. But I think that's cool. I think that's a good thing.
And Linda says she loves the picture that you had before.
The red door?
Yes.
I think she asked me on Facebook about that red door. She must have been there before. But yeah, I like the I like the red door as well. Okay, so can you still see my screen?
I can only see you, so you have to reshare whatever app you're using.
Okay. Yep. So I'm going to start this, and just yell to me if you can't see it, because sometimes there's been some problems with this. So can you see it?
No, you're going to have to share.
Yeah, why did I?
Click share, and you should be able to pick that video.
Yeah, that's what I did, but it's. Oh, okay, hold on. So the picture, the video I'm going to show you is something that was done at Longwood Gardens, and it was one day that I went there, and what I did was I did everything. I did focus stacking, I did fake backgrounds, real backgrounds, flash, handheld, tripod. I just did a combination of everything. And some of you may have seen this before, but I think most of you have not. So, and can you see my screen now?
I can see the file folder, but no video yet.
So let's see if we could see the video this time.
Not yet.
Oh, why is that not working? Okay, I'm sorry.
Just pause the video and don't close it, and then you should be able to hit share again and select that program.
Okay, so hold on. I'm not sure that I could pause it. Okay, that should work. I'm not sure that I could pause that video.
It might be easier to share the screen that is going to pop up on.
Yeah, that's.
If you have two screens, just share that one screen that is going to pop up on.
Yeah, I mean, I've done this before. It's always worked. I'm not. We had a problem with it the other day, though. So if I can't do it, we can't do it. We could just talk, but let me try this one more time.
That may work.
Uh,
It says you started screen sharing.
you could still hear me, right?
Yes.
You can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Hello.
Are you there?
Nick, can you hear us? We can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you. All right, one more time. This is the last try. Should work this time. Yes?
No.
Why is it? What's the problem here?
It looks like you're sharing the video, not the actual screen.
Yeah, you're sharing your
Oh, I know.
Finder.
How about this?
That might work. There you go.
So again, the purpose of that video is just to show you that there was, so many different techniques used there. And, some pictures you might have liked, some pictures you might have not liked, but it wasn't a matter of you liked it or didn't like it because it was, 26 images focus stacked or a fake background or a real background or flash or diffuser or LED light, it didn't matter. What really matters is the final process, and the fact that they all started out as photographs done with the camera. So that's basically all I have. Certainly open to questions.
We do have a question regarding the orchid focus stacking.
Yes.
Was a macro rail used?
No.
And then which program did you stack them with?
So no, I did not use a macro rail. I have a macro rail, and I've used it about 3 times. That camera was just on the tripod. The nice thing about the mirrorless camera is the focusing screen. The entire screen has focusing points, so you could just take your finger and move. So I just take my finger on the bottom and touch it, and just work my way up. Okay, and I go from the bottom to the top, or the foreground to the background. And I use Photoshop, auto blend, auto stack, the stacking feature, or you could use stacks in Lightroom, and it works pretty well.
Excellent. We're getting a couple more questions. Melinda, I'm going to unmute you so that you can ask your question. Give me 1 second here. You're unmuted, Melinda.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
The muted pink flower, how did you get that? Because it wasn't really out of focus, but it looked like it was muted. Like,
Yes.
it was the only pink flower.
Yes. So I think it was a rose, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was done 2 ways. Number one, it was done selective focus on the rose.
Okay.
Then it was double exposure. And then the second exposure was, so it was like at f2.8, right? The top of the rose part of it.
Okay.
And then I shot it at like maybe f11, slightly out of focus in a double exposure.
Okay. Nice, very nice. They're all very beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
If anybody has questions, please let me know and I will unmute you. Martin has a question. I'm unmuting him now.
Hello, Nick. Yeah, first of all, a very nice presentation. I really enjoyed it here as a guest today. And I asked the question about the orchid and the stacking. I do this all the time, so I do a lot of microscopy stacking with up to 100 photos. I do orchid, phalaenopsis, all kind of orchid stacking photography.
Yep.
And the issue I came across via Raise the Question is if you just use a mirrorless camera with a macro lens and you simply zoom on different spots or change your focus point accordingly for the different photos to be stacked later on, you change your view every time when you move, when you change the focus in your macro lens. And then I found it very hard in an older version of Photoshop to stack this correctly, because sometimes it lost the points where to align with each other. One way to get around this is really with the macro rail. And the other is, and that's something I don't know, I don't use Photoshop CC, I use the CS6 version, an older version, but I don't think it really changed too much. So I use a bunch of other freeware programs which are specialized in focus stacking. I was able to get this done, but Photoshop didn't give me the results I wanted.
I before Photoshop CC, the last couple of versions, I used Helicon Focus.
Yes.
And I thought Helicon did a great job, because I agree. What used to happen in Photoshop is there'd just be missing spots in the picture. Right?
Exactly.
Right. And I think the newer ones are a lot better.
Okay.
But I'm certainly not doing anything scientific. So certainly if I was doing something scientific, and I would definitely use the rail. I have a rail. The older I get, the less stuff I want to carry around with me.
No, that's okay, but that confirms what I saw. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Martin, John has a program for you. John, you're unmuted.
Oh yeah, just suggest the Zareen stacker.
Oh yeah.
You probably know it. It seems to work pretty well.
I use a different one. It's called Picolet.
Picolet?
Yes.
Well, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah. It's a very good one. Freeware.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Can you put that in
Thank
the
you.
chat, guys, so that everybody can have that information?
Yeah,
Then
Martin,
I-
if you could type the name of that program so we have it.
Thank you.
Picolay, okay. Picolay. If anybody else has any questions, let me know. I'll unmute you.
Any comments? Any,
We had a comment from John Crizel. He was very happy to check out your presentation, and you said that you handled it very well. He was glad that he came.
I just hope that I get you kind of thinking, you know, maybe motivated to do some new things, inspired a little bit. You know, go out and hopefully some things I mentioned, if you don't know about it, go out and learn about it now that we have so much time spent at home. You know, I've been doing, like I said, I've been going through MoMA, through Coursera, through Kelby, just taking as many courses in art and photography that I could find, and just using this time productively rather than watch TV or, you know, spend time on social media.
Nick, it's Debbie Aniano again. Thank you very, very much for presenting to us today. It was very enjoyable, very informative.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Appreciate you reaching out and letting us know that you were doing these programs. You're
Yeah,
obviously
anytime. I
very
have lots of
comfortable with it.
programs. If you want any of my programs, I could do them.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for coming tonight. We really enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Be safe, everybody.
I'll leave this open. If anybody wants to talk to anybody, I'll unmute everybody, but thank you for a good meeting, Nick. And
Thanks,
you'll
and I
be
don't have
hearing
to
from us
drive
soon.
home. This is great.
Yeah, excellent.
All right. See you, everybody.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Everybody's unmuted.
I want you to say thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Great presentation.
Very
well.
Very good.
Great.
Okay.
No, no era cuando mañana.
They can't keep you safe. That's my job. Wasn't the only out here when I was talking. I love you. Can't you see that?
Who's watching TV?
Why can't you see that? What I've tried to do is protect you. All I ever tried to do is protect you.
Daniel, is that Patricia in there with you? You want to protect her?
Everybody's quiet tonight.
Yeah.
Who's there?
She's with me. We're still out here, Daniel.
Listen to the soap opera.
What you doing over there, John?
Almost coming, man.
There you go. That better?
Yeah, now I can see you.
Yeah. How are you?
All right.
Hey,
How you
Daniel.
been?
I did check the
You want to protect her? This is not the best way to do that.
Pinhole Photography Day, and your photo still wasn't uploaded yet. So.
I haven't put mine up yet either. I have to do it tomorrow.
Have to
Daniel,
see.
we know about your mom.
Rose, you got to mute your TV. It's loud.
We know that she was shot in cold blood.
You're making me move. Oh,
Yep.
She didn't deserve that. That animal's still out there.
there's that
They
better.
made you move, and you have them remote.
Yes. Well, because my normal, friend is got me tied down.
Oh,
Hi. There you go, girl.
They said you can't find mine. Huh?
Joe
I
Gilchrist,
couldn't
how come
find
we
it.
can't see you?
Either New Jersey or the CDCC.
Yeah, I see that. And
Well, How long ago did you upload it?
It was a couple, well, the same day I put it on Facebook.
That was yesterday, wasn't it?
Yesterday, and
I think so, yeah. I don't know how long does it take them to put them up?
Early on, it was taking maybe a couple of hours, but I remember one year, last year, it took about a day and a half. So, I don't know.
Okay.
You'll see.
Um,
Did you size it properly?
yeah, 700.
Okay. Because if it wasn't sized, then they would have to do the sizing. And that might take more time. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I sized it right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to look on my other. Oh, let me stop this video.